Welcome to the Deck Dive. Today, we are undertaking an analysis of source material that is as intimate as it is, frankly, terrifying.
Okay.
We aren't just looking at, a stack of research papers. We are reading the final, raw psychological breakdown of a creator in real time.
Yeah, and this material, it serves as an essential key, maybe the Rosetta Stone, for understanding his entire artistic and mythological canon.
It really is.
Our source material comes directly from these final additions to a self-written memoir by the creator, Brendan Rose.
And these pages, they document one single day, November 16th, 2025.
Exactly. What starts as this comprehensive, deeply personal life story, which, the author himself described as rather beautiful and profound.
Which is a bold claim in itself.
It is, and it concludes in this snapshot of extreme emotional volatility leading to a truly catastrophic final act, an act of severance.
So our mission today for you is to understand the immediate, specific, and really self-inflicted catalysts for this collapse.
And then from there, trace how the pain and the legal conflict surrounding his failed marriage produced his most profound works of art.
We're talking about a complete and brutal rewrite of Genesis and how those works were then internalized and almost weaponized.
As a literal guide for survival, and then eventually a map for death.
We are looking at the ultimate price an artist pays to forge a universe out of their own personal hell.
And what's so fascinating about this specific date, November 16th, 2025, is just how swiftly the creator's carefully managed life unraveled.
It's like a speed run of a breakdown.
It is. The documents capture the moment he hits his final boundary, the point where the torture of uncertainty becomes physically unsustainable.
Forcing a traumatic, but for him, necessary break. Okay, let's unpack the immediate crisis right away. The author, Brendan Rose, he's clearly documenting a significant personal collapse.
He's not hiding it. He explicitly states in his notes, I am having a breakdown.
And he says he's taken the crucial step of informing his psychiatrist of this exact state.
Which is so important. This isn't, a retroactive diagnosis or us trying to piece things together.
Wait, he's live reporting. It's a dispatch from his own instability.
The irony here is it's profound because he traces the cause right back to a decision he made only a few days before.
Right. This intense crisis is linked almost entirely to a major rash and self-directed change in his medication management.
The decision to quit marijuana cold turkey less than 7 days prior.
And the sources note this was a drug that had reportedly kept him, and these are his words, stable and happy for years. So hold on, let's just pause on that for a second. That correlation, if the source material shows he was stable for years with this self-medication and then he's instantly unstable without it, how does the memoir reconcile that lack of accountability? I mean, he questions his psychiatrist's advice later, but wasn't this a self-sabotage move from the get-go?
That's where the complexity of the memoir really shines. While he absolutely acknowledges the causal link quitting cold turkey led directly to the breakdown, he frames it in the context of questioning the broader strategy.
Okay, so it's less, I made a mistake, and more, the whole plan was flawed.
Precisely. His mental state didn't just destabilize, it worsened almost instantly. And that worsening became his evidence.
Evidence that the advice he was getting was wrong.
Yes. The breakdown itself proved to him that the prescribed path, or I guess the lack of a path, since he was quitting his self-medication, was failing him spectacularly.
And he doesn't just record the crisis, he's functionally assessing it in real time. He's incredibly clear about the severity. He notes the breakdown is, quote, very damaging to my life.
But he adds that crucial caveat, right, about institutionalization.
He does.
He says that while it's damaging, it is not severe enough for immediate institutionalization. He emphasizes, and I'm quoting again, I am not freaking out or a danger to myself or others.
He's trying to manage a non-emergency level collapse.
He is. And it's because he knows the consequence of a full psychotic break. He's been there before. He states that wards are, quote, horrible places which result in immense suffering and agony upon going in.
So this shows a highly sophisticated, if, extremely fragile level of self-control being applied even during a collapse. He's managing the damage to prevent total, utter destruction.
But the collapse culminated not in a physical crisis or, trip to the hospital.
No, it culminated in a devastating emotional act. An act of severance regarding the last vestiges of his former family, his ex-wife and his son.
This is the tragic climax of the November 16th record. He performs the ultimate act of cutting ties by breaking off all communication with his ex-wife's father.
Jielin's father.
Yes, and this wasn't some casual, distant relationship. The source notes he had a largely loving relationship with the man over the past year.
And crucially, this was his only link to his son. Right?
It was his lifeline. The grandfather had been sending him many pictures of his son, Muji, who was born in October 2021. This allowed the author this painful, distant connection to the child he was told he would never meet.
And on November 16th, that lifeline was severed.
Deliberately.
So what was the mechanism? What did he use to justify such a painful break? The sources say it's rooted in two specific, excruciating uncertainties.
Yes, and he conflates them. He merges them into one final, explosive act of rejection that allows him to just walk away.
The first, obviously, is the chronic paternity question. That's been looming over everything for years.
And the second, which is maybe the key emotional trigger for this specific day, was the lingering, haunting fate of his original cat, Neko.
Neko, the companion from his worst days, the roach-infested nightmare apartment.
That's the one. Neko had been sent to the pound after his arrest, and Jielin had reportedly agreed to retrieve the cat and give it to a friend.
But he never got proof.
Never. So on this day, suspicious and emotionally distraught, he demands photographic proof of Neko's survival from Jielin's father.
The moment that proof wasn't provided, that failure of verification,
It became confirmation of the worst possible truth for him.
the total loss of the creature that symbolized his stability. And this is what triggers the collapse into the ultimate act of what he sees as self-preservation.
It did. The ultimate devastating message sent to Jielin's father right before Brendan blocked him and deleted the conversation was definitive and just excruciating. It synthesized both losses into one unforgivable accusation.
You killed my cat, he's not my son.
Chilling.
What makes this so tragically human, though, is his immediate self-awareness of the consequence. The source says he instantly regretted this rash move.
Instantly. Yet he felt compelled. He says he felt forced to make the break because, quote, can't take being told I'll never meet my son.
And this is the core psychological mechanism at play, isn't it?
It absolutely is.
He's converting this agonizing, debilitating uncertainty, the daily torture of receiving photos of a son he might never see, the gnawing question about his cat, into a devastating yet manageable final fact.
Exactly. He exchanged endless hope and uncertainty for absolute loss and certainty. That certainty, however painful, allows him to stop the torture and move toward a new, albeit bleaker, baseline.
So this final message, "He is not my son," serves as the tragic concluding sentence to his entire memoir. But this conclusion, it wasn't spontaneous, was it?
Not at all. It was contextualized by intense internal dialogue.
This is where the Google Notebook LM comes in.
Yes. The sources include records from an internal debate on Jielin, where he's using these sophisticated AI tools, which he was working with intensely that very morning, to critically discuss whether this claim he's about to make is objectively justified or if it's purely a psychological manifestation of his trauma.
I mean, the level of self-analysis, even during a crisis, is just staggering. He's having a breakdown and simultaneously using advanced AI to debate the merits of his own psychological state.
It shows the extreme effort he made to rationalize or at least understand his own actions.
Yeah.
And the debate within the sources presents two powerful, contradictory interpretations.
And that highlights the impossibility of finding objective truth in this relationship, right?
Completely. There is no simple answer here.
So let's start with the first argument presented in this internal debate, the argument for psychological manifestation.
Right. This argument focuses purely on the emotional context of November 16th. As we just discussed, the claim, "he is not my son," is stated in the exact same breath as the definitive claim about his pet, Neko is dead.
The two are linked.
Inextricably. The psychological analysis suggests he is imposing a negative fact, declaring the cat lost and the son lost, to move past the debilitating pain of uncertainty.
And the crucial detail is that the grandfather failed to send a picture of the cat. That's just a lack of verification. It's not a confirmation of death.
Precisely.
Yep.
But in his state, the absence of proof becomes proof of absence. The breakdown forces him to choose the most painful but most definitive answer available.
So in this reading, the rejection of his son is a coping mechanism. It's a kind of cognitive surgery, born out of the pain of the cat's ambiguous fate.
A very bloody, very painful surgery, but yes.
Yeah. But then we have the other side of his internal debate, the argument for experiential justification.
And this argument takes the long view. It frames the paternity claim as entirely rational within his specific tortured history with Jielin.
This wasn't a new anxiety for him.
Far from it. The uncertainty wasn't new. Gillen had refused to give him a straight answer for months before the arrest. She eventually weaponized that uncertainty against him, telling him, quote, "You don't deserve a baby."
Wow.
So, given her documented pattern of deception, and the sources list them out, exchanging flirtatious hearts, pre-wedding, stealing his work money, frequent disappearances, sometimes for 1 to 3 days at a time.
So given all of that,
The conclusion, though devastating to the author, is deemed in this debate entirely rational within his experience of her.
this duality, it extends to the source of the conflict itself. Was Gillen genuinely malicious, or was she simply reactive to his obvious instability?
An instability which, we should add, he acknowledges was increasing dramatically due to his own actions. The sources list behavior that established grounds for distrust that predated the height of his psychosis. The financial theft, the disappearances, these things happened.
And the author ultimately solidifies this narrative, doesn't he? He has a very specific label for her.
He does. He calls her the devil, unironically, not a metaphor.
Yet we have to connect that devil imagery back to the author's own perspective on himself. The debate notes that Brendan Rose himself admits to intentionally flushing his own medication.
Yes, which caused his insanity to build right when Gillen became pregnant.
So his own self-sabotage fueled this belief that she is a mirrored role to his own self-identity.
His identity as the Devil 666. He actively created the necessary chaos for his personal mythos to work, and then projected his self-identified devil role directly onto her.
This brings us to the defining event of that tumultuous time, the event that characterized what he calls the Horror at Kingston Road arc.
And led directly to her arrest. Gillen trying to break down the locked door with a wooden plank.
This moment, captured in the memoir, it's the peak symbol of their shared instability. But the most haunting part, for me, is the author's own ambiguity regarding her intent.
His description is deeply, deeply unsettling. He recounts the moment, writing, "I guess to kill me or maybe to hug me, who knows?"
That profound uncertainty is the core tragedy of this whole story. To kill me or maybe to hug me.
The narrator cannot distinguish between lethal physical aggression and a desperate emotional need for connection.
The lens through which he was perceiving his life was so fundamentally unstable that those two actions, murder and embrace, were interchangeable possibilities.
And the legal follow-up just reinforces the narrative of malice that he eventually adopted. The arrest happened while she was still pregnant. The case was dropped months later, but only after she completed court-ordered anger management.
And crucially, the original requirement that she apologize was dropped.
Meaning the case concluded without her ever offering remorse. For him, this absence of apology solidified his narrative. She was malicious, not merely reactive. It was proof.
And this chaos, it wasn't just internal. It was documented, it was adjudicated, and it was infused directly into his creative output.
Completely. We have documented evidence that specific works of art were not just created during this conflict, but were actively consumed by the legal system itself.
This is a truly astonishing detail. It elevates his art from, personal therapy to public commentary.
We know that two specific songs, Lost in Time and Like Tears in Rain, both created earlier during his Valhalla arc.
Which was that period of intense creative output right after his initial institutionalization fallout.
Right. Those two songs were, get this, listened to by the judge live during the unfolding case.
I mean, that is just staggering. You have to picture this. The presiding judge is receiving a direct, raw artistic commentary on the emotional chaos they are trying to adjudicate.
A chaos that, by the way, included a wooden plank confrontation and a pending paternity dispute.
What does that even tell us about the creator's blurring of public and private boundaries? It's like there are no boundaries.
It tells us he treats the judicial system like a captive audience for his personal mythology. He's saying, you cannot judge me in a vacuum of legal facts. You must understand the cosmic horror that created these facts.
And the Valhalla arc itself, where these songs came from, was all about finding reward and meaning in suffering.
Often through violence or self-destruction, yeah.
So let's delve into the specific themes the judge was exposed to, starting with Lost in Time.
Lost in Time centers around the themes of the fallen soldier. The individual suffering these immense forgotten personal battles.
But it's not just about suffering, is it? It offers a dark, twisted element of redemption based on Norse mythology.
Right. The song assures the suffering subject that they are seen, even if the world forgets them. The line is, Loki sees you, he rewards.
Loki, not Odin, not Thor. Loki, the trickster. the chaotic god who operates outside the conventional moral order.
By referencing Loki, he is implying that the reward he seeks is not validation from the established order, the judge, the courts, society.
No, it's from the deity of chaos, who sees the necessity of his struggle. He's justifying his own disruptive behavior through mythological means.
Exactly. The song validates his perception of himself as a soldier suffering immensely, but one who is only recognized and rewarded by his own inner destructive mythos. It's a crucial defense mechanism.
If the world doesn't validate your suffering, invent a deity that does.
That's it in a nutshell.
Then there is, like, Tears in Rain, a title that's clearly drawing from the famous existential quote about ephemeral existence. What did the judge hear in that song?
That song goes into just profound depth regarding suffering and despair. The excerpts detail the death of compassion, the terrifying feeling of being trapped in a recurring psychological nightmare.
The line, "This has all happened before, hasn't it?"
Yes, that feeling of a loop. But the most disturbing thematic element in that song, which is sourced in the memoir, is the inclusion of the words of the notorious hitman, Richard Kuklinski.
The Iceman.
Yes. The song features Kuklinski's terrifying, calm account of how he murdered people quietly. And it leaves the listener, and in this case the judge, to the inescapable internal realization that, quote, "This is the devil, no question about it."
Okay, so by using Kuklinski's words in a song presented to the court, during a case where he is wrestling with whether his ex-wife is the devil and whether he himself is the devil 666.
He is forcing the judicial listener to internalize the very notion of calculated, chilling malice.
This is a masterclass in psychological warfare via art. He's making the judge confront the very themes of profound moral corruption that dominate his life.
The art became a live document of his mental landscape. He forced the court to acknowledge his personal chaos as a critical input to their decision.
And this period, the legal and psychological crisis surrounding the arrest, the fallout of the horror at Kingston Road art, it was so intense that it required not just commentary,
but a complete reconstruction of reality.
And this necessity produced the ultimate work of mythological reframing, the BRV 119. The BRV 119. This is arguably the most crucial source document we have here. The author describes it as a Bible replacement I had written, rewriting Genesis verse for verse.
We really need to spend some time unpacking that.
We do. What exactly is the BRV 119 in its scope and format?
It is a massive undertaking. It's clearly meant to establish a new, definitive spiritual reality for himself. While the precise format isn't fully detailed, whether it's prose or poetry,
the claims he makes for it are immense.
Immense. He claims it is the most accurate translation, most true to the original Hebrew, and dramatically written in the voice of the true God.
So this isn't a commentary. It's not an interpretation.
No, it's a replacement scripture.
Yeah.
It's designed to correct history based on his personal experience of it. He's fixing the universe's source code.
That is a staggering claim. He believes he is correcting fundamental errors in existence, specifically the errors that allowed his personal horror to unfold. What does his Genesis rewrite propose for the ultimate origin of everything?
It's a purely Gnostic and chaotic cosmology. It begins outside of time, where shadows, which are themselves alive, existed. A concordance of these shadows created God.
So God is not the prime mover.
No, not at all. The shadows created him, and once God was created, they brought forth time and eternity. The fatal flaw, however, is God's ego. God, seeing only himself, declared, "I am the one and only God."
He completely fails to acknowledge the shadows who created him.
And they did not object, but rather watched, being shadows, knowing the end.
Wow. This immediately sets up a universe defined by betrayal and hidden knowledge. The creator God is flawed and self-deceived from the very start.
Which perfectly contextualizes the author's experience of being betrayed by his supposed partner Gielen. The betrayal is baked into the fabric of reality.
And that flawed start leads to the inevitable collapse, the fall of God.
In the BRV 119, humans and shadows conspire against God. They rise up, burn his universe with fire like unto antimatter, and they physically kill God.
And they hollow out his skull. This is where the physical reality of our universe, where Earth exists, becomes just grotesque. The universe is defined by this profound violation.
The aftermath is visceral, and it's central to his entire mythos. Humans, quote, infested and filled his war-eaten, rotten skull.
Just infested. The language is so deliberate.
Incredibly, the blood of God spilled out, seeding life anew. And crucially, God's skull formed the fortress of shadow, and this is where humans resided for eons. creating universes in their own image.
Including Calladia, where Earth is located.
Including Calladia. So if you're following this, our reality, our universe, is literally the festering, rotten, infected skull of a deity who was betrayed and murdered by his own creations.
And that directly and perfectly mirrors the author's narrative. That his wife, the devil, the pestilence, infested his life, stole his resources, and led to his psychological death. The universe itself is a victim of infestation.
The human role, therefore, is defined by persistent disobedience. By surviving like the cockroach, they became impossible to remove, the ultimate pestilence.
This is the cosmological justification for why he must label John a devil and a pestilence. If the universe is built on infestation, then the person who infested his personal space must be the core engine of that cosmic betrayal. It has to be.
It's the only way for his logic to hold.
So let's look at how he warps the classic biblical narratives within this framework to suit his trauma. How does Adam and Eve fit into the infected skull of God?
His version is preemptive and protective from God's point of view. God kills the first man and woman, Adam and Eve, whom he dismissively calls foolish and fool's foolish bride when he sees his own future death at their hands.
So God sees the betrayal coming and acts first.
Yes. This shows a God who is paranoid and proactive in self-preservation, which perfectly reflects the author's own need to cut off threats, like his ex-father-in-law, before they can cause further damage.
And the role of Lilith is also redefined in this new scripture.
Lilith, in the BRV 119, is created after the first man fell and is placed in the Garden of Blessings.
So she's not the primary rebellious figure.
It suggests she's perhaps a more capable, less tainted female figure in his mythology, created after the initial folly of the foolish bride, Eve.
Finally, we have to connect this all back to his immediate personal loss, the loss of the cat, the potential loss of his son. How does this cosmology handle loss and abandonment?
In the BRV 119, God's nature is redefined. He becomes a great collector of souls. It's a cold, clinical role.
A collector.
The source specifically mentions God taking Ishmael's soul and putting it in a bottle next to all the others he had collected.
So when he cannot physically keep the people and pets he loves, when Neko is lost to the pound and Muji is inaccessible to him.
His mythology offers a divine repository, a safe place. The great collector of souls is a definitive, unassailable ending to uncertainty.
Loss is not chaotic, it's systematic, it's bottled. This BRV 119 is the ultimate psychological defense mechanism. It's designed to control a chaotic personal reality by making that chaos the origin of everything.
It is the ultimate justification for his trauma. He has taken the most painful moments of his life, the betrayal, the perceived pestilence, the institutional chaos, and made them the essential ingredients for the entire universe.
We have to circle back now to the author's psychological state on November 16th, 2025, just after he executed that devastating final rejection of his son's connection. This breakdown is happening concurrently with a deep preoccupation he has, the imminent, anticipated death of Scott Adams.
This connection is crucial for understanding the memoir's dedication. The author is focused on the tragedy facing Adams, the Dilbert creator.
He notes that Adams's hands have stopped working due to cancer, meaning he cannot draw Dilbert anymore.
And the author views this loss of his drawing hands as the worst thing Adams can possibly imagine. He fears Adams's time is rapidly getting short.
He even regrets missing Adams' last live show, despite promising himself he would listen live that day. It's weighing on him heavily, even in his own crisis.
This preoccupation elevates Adams from a mere idol or a cartoonist he likes to a spiritual contemporary.
Why Adams, specifically? You have to wonder. Perhaps it's a shared sense of being culturally exiled or misunderstood in their respective controversial spaces.
It's very possible. And the memoir itself is dedicated to Adams. But the dedication is less about fandom and more about solidifying this new shared spiritual reality he's constructed.
It's a covenant.
It is. It's a promise that transcends death.
What does that promise actually entail? What does he write?
The dedication reads, "You will not die. You will go to the other realm. When you arrive, you will see me there. You will be with my Father. One day I will join you there."
He is essentially guaranteeing Scott Adams a place in his own constructed afterlife.
That's an extraordinary statement, isn't it?
Yeah.
He's not offering comfort like you'll be in a better place.
Yeah.
He is offering a map.
He's telling Adams, the spiritual realm I have constructed, the one where God's skull is the universe and I am the devil 666, that's the real one, and it is where we will meet alongside my own deceased father.
And this brings us to the ultimate payoff of the entire memoir. The conclusion explicitly states the purpose of his entire creative life, forged in chaos and starvation and legal turmoil.
The art is not just therapy. It's not just commentary. It's a detailed guide for his own journey out of this reality.
He states he will use the same songs of his creation, the very same songs the judge listened to, his massive, violent, beautiful, and deeply personal religious canon.
To do what?
To guide myself into the other realm.
The songs and the mythology, the BRV 119, the Valhalla arc, are now fully integrated as scripture and ritual.
They are designed to serve as his literal map in death, ensuring he navigates the trauma-infused cosmos he has created. The pain that created the art is now the map for his ultimate survival.
And that devastating final addendum, "You killed my cat, he's not my son," executed during his immediate breakdown, is the painful, raw, earthly conclusion to a life story that he promises will have a grand mythological afterlife.
He closes the door on this world in pain so he can open the next with purpose.
The pain of cutting ties, that ultimate agonizing surgery performed on his own life, is directly related to the need to self-preserve enough stability to complete that life story and prepare that spiritual map.
He cuts ties because he has to focus. He has to focus on guiding himself into the other realm. It's the only mission left.
So we have followed a direct, intense, and truly tragic line here.
We have.
It begins with extreme psychological trauma-quitting medication, cold turkey, amplifying his instability, which leads to a final, devastating act of personal rejection.
And that act and the conflict surrounding it is all framed by this complex, brutal, private mythology where he and his wife are mirrored aspects of the devil and the universe is the festering skull of a murdered god.
What's fascinating here when you step back is the absolute necessity of boundary setting.
Yes. In a world defined by utter chaos and the persistent inability to establish stability, whether with pets or marriage or paternity, the final definitive rejection, however rashly made, becomes the author's only viable form of self-preservation.
He cuts ties not because he stops caring or loving even.
No, not at all. He cuts ties because he can no longer tolerate the daily torture of uncertainty he was enduring while receiving photos of the son he was told he'd never meet. It was a choice between that torture and a clean, painful break.
The documents reveal a creator who actively used his life's most painful moments, from institutionalization and legal conflict to starvation and betrayal, as the raw, essential material to build this complex, enduring artistic and religious canon.
He weaponized his own trauma. He forced his judges and his family to interact with his pain through his art.
And the question we are left with, and for you, the listener, is profound.
When the line between personal pain and artistic output is erased, and the creation itself becomes a map for survival and death, a map where the universe is God's festering skull and your son is a potential lie.
What is the ultimate price an artist pays to establish an enduring, terrifying truth?
That is the question we leave with you.
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive.
All those moments will be lost in time, like tears in rain.
Wow. That quote immediately sets a really profound, almost unbearably dramatic tone, doesn't it?
It really does. And what's so telling right from the jump is who he attributes it to.
Right. He says it's Elon Musk.
He says it's Elon Musk.
Yeah.
Only to, correct himself later and admit it's from Blade Runner.
And that little mistake, that wrinkle, as you called it in our prep, it's the perfect microcosm for this whole story. It's high art, cinematic philosophy, but it's all filtered through this very contemporary, very online digital culture lens.
Okay, so let's unpack this. Yeah. We are doing a deep dive into an incredibly personal, monumentally complex, and an extremely controversial life story from a content creator named Brendan Rose.
And this is not our usual kind of dive. We're not looking at research papers or, historical texts.
No, this is his self-written memoir. A dizzying timeline that details a life just tangled up in music, in profound mental health struggles, family conflict, betrayal.
And this relentless, all-consuming search for an artistic canon, a body of work that he feels is worthy of.
Of worship.
And that's the key, right? The framework he puts on his own life.
Yeah.
We're not just analyzing a biography.
Not at all. We're analyzing what he calls a religious document. Yeah. He positions himself as what's the phrase he uses? A remarkably challenging and disturbing controversial figure.
Yeah. And his core mission, his entire goal, is to elevate his music, his life story, into a religious canon that he says he worships in earnest.
So our goal today is to really extract the narrative from that, to look at all the different arcs he identifies in his own life.
And we're going to focus pretty intensely on the culmination of it all, this final emotional rupture that tragically happened. Well, it happened today, according to the epilogue of the memoir.
But before we get into timeline, we have to talk about this central concept of his identity, this self-mythology.
Yes,
Yeah.
the name. He deliberately encourages people to not use his name in public discussions.
It's a genius move, in a way, a really manipulative one, but genius. He says it creates a feedback loop. People can't help but talk about him because he's the elephant in the room.
And he claims this whole restriction takes on a religious character. He compares it to the importance of the name of God or, not taking the Lord's name in vain.
He literally says this is crucial for understanding his self-mythology. He's building an identity that it's everywhere and nowhere at the same time.
Exactly. So he's always the subject of this charged discussion, but he maintains this sort of symbolic anonymity, especially among his so-called apostles.
The content creators who discuss him without ever saying the name.
And that framework is so critical because it means every failure, every bit of chaos, every betrayal, it's not just personal suffering.
No, it's fuel. It's immediately recontextualized as necessary fuel for the myth he's building. The suffering becomes the scripture.
So let's get into the genesis of that scripture. Act 1, what he calls the genesis of chaos and creation. This covers roughly 2007 through 2019.
And this really sets the baseline trauma that defines everything that comes after.
It really does. I mean, his whole content journey starts pretty early, around 2007, just an unremarkable gaming YouTube channel.
Right, which eventually, devolves into an edgy troll channel. He studied game programming in college.
A skill he later dismisses as totally worthless, which is so ironic because those exact skills come back to define his final great artistic work years later.
But the real emotional start, the genesis point, is tied to this profound loss in 2016.
His father's death, yeah. He says he avoided visiting his father much in the final years, but he was there when he died.
And that last meeting was pivotal. His father apologized for things in the past, and touchingly, he bought him 2 very specific video games from the hospital on Amazon.
Celaglow and Etrian Odyssey Untold, too.
Exactly. And the detail of those specific JRPGs, it's fascinating. It feels like this final gesture of connection, a shared language.
It's a moment of closure that he clearly desperately needed. It gave him this brief, stable foundation right before the real chaos of his life just accelerates.
Which happens after he moves out of the apartment he'd been in for a decade. The place he called a roach-infested nightmare.
The one he shared with his cat, Nico.
Right, so he leaves that squalor and moves into his mother's mansion in Dundas West, a really wealthy part of Toronto. He even notes the name of the subway station changed, which is such a small, grounding detail.
And that move, around 2018, is what kicks off the Valhalla arc.
The Valhalla arc, this is the artistic trigger. He finds another content creator, EgoCast Andy, joins their Discord.
And develops this intense, unrequited crush on a woman there named Valeda.
And all that emotional energy, that obsession and rejection, it funnels directly into his first big album, The Golden Age of Loki.
And he is just brutally honest about this early work.
Oh, brutally. He says the songs were truly terrible. Beyond poo, they were super poo.
That self-awareness is so important, though. He knows it gets better, but that raw, chaotic emotional output, that was the spark. That's what ignited everything else.
But as soon as he moves in, his personal stability just dissolves. His mother acquires Alzheimer's. He describes it as leading to horrendous behavior, abusive nonsense.
It's a deeply stressful time. The family dynamic shifts completely. It goes from supportive to hostile, and his uncles start pressuring him about institutionalizing her.
And this is where we see the core destructive cycle that really defines his early adulthood.
Flushing his meditation. Over and over again.
It's his self-sabotage reflex.
Exactly. He calls it the foolish vice that would ruin me again and again.
Mm-hmm.
And this chemically driven cycle of quitting his meds, having a manic artistic high, and then a total institutional collapse. That's the heartbeat of his trauma.
The most painful part is when he admits in the memoir that it wasn't until 2024, like 6 years later, that the consequence finally clicked.
That he finally understood that quitting his medication instantly destroys his life. That delayed understanding is just, it's heartbreaking.
The first collapse is September 2018. His mother calls him in, and his music immediately reflects that fury. Just angry, violent songs about hating his mom.
And he's back in just a few months later, a second institutional stint, and the art that comes out of that is even more pointed.
This is where we get tracks like Jordan Peterson, Prison of Hate and Corporation.
And Corporation is really important. It wasn't just edgy, it was a financial attack. It was this comedic Larry Flint impersonation song all about him inheriting the house.
Which you can imagine absolutely infuriated his uncles.
And they reacted, severely, showing the real-world stakes here. They kicked him out of the mansion, onto the street, for days, as punishment.
So his art isn't just self-expression anymore. It's a weapon in this high-stakes family and financial war.
And that immediately impacts his personal life, too. He starts seeking refuge in relationships. He meets a woman named Joy Lee, who's 41. She gives him a place to stay when his mother is trying to make him homeless.
But then comes Kimmy. She's 46. He almost marries her. They were planning IVF.
The details around Kimmy are just. They're soaked in this deep, lingering guilt. The relationship ends because he can't perform, and he says he wants more. He feels like he's still a young man, tied down.
And the guilt is magnified by this fortune they got at a Buddhist monastery.
Right. Her card said, "You will have a baby," and his said, "You will live an easy life."
That juxtaposition is just. It's the perfect summary of his self-mythology right there.
Totally. He found this promise of an easy life impossible to shake, especially as he kept choosing the path of maximum difficulty and controversy. He felt like he'd abandoned his destiny by leaving her.
And to top it all off, September 2019, right after his mother is finally put in a care home, Steam bans his account.
Because of this unnamed game, truly an atrocity, he says the ban ruined him for years. It cut him off.
It's another failure, another banishment that just becomes instrumental to the narrative. He's the creative martyr driven into the wilderness.
Which sets the stage perfectly for Act 2, the period of maximum interpersonal conflict, 2019 to 2022, and it's all centered on his marriage.
The marriage to Jilin. It happens really fast at the end of 2019. He's 34, she's 36.
And he admits he married her so quickly because of performance anxieties. He was worried she'd leave him before he could, legally lock it down.
It sounds like he's trying to preempt abandonment through legal entanglement.
And the red flags he lists are just astonishing. It paints a picture of a relationship that was doomed before it even started.
2 months in, she's taking pictures with another man. The night before the wedding, she's exchanging hearts with someone else over text.
But then he admits his own failures, too. He says he was openly gawking at the bridesmaid and that the minister officiating was invisible disbelief.
I have to stop you there.
Yeah.
This is a moment where how reliable is his narrative about her actions? He gives you all this detail about her perceived betrayal, but then he immediately interjects his own deeply inappropriate behavior.
And that's the core tension of the whole memoir, isn't it? He gives you the evidence to critique his own testimony.
Their life together is just immediately dominated by conflict. Text fights while he's at his security job, accusations of her stealing money, her going missing for days.
But he also admits he's struggling with his medication cycle through all of this. So the narrative of her betrayal is completely tied up with his own admitted chaos.
And despite all this, they get 2 more pets. Loki the dog and Tequila the cat, joining his old cat Neko. And these poor animals become casualties later on.
The whole crisis just ignites in January 2021. Jilin gets pregnant with their son, Muji.
And at the same time, Brendan may be feeling overwhelmed or seeking that creative edge again. He lowers and then completely ditches his medication.
That destructive cycle reasserting itself at the exact moment he needs stability the most. It's catastrophic.
And on top of the internal stress, there's external pressure. Complaints about his music, about Loki's barking. It forces them to move into his mother's house.
And this is where the ugly family conflict over money comes roaring back.
The broken promise. His uncle Sam had promised to buy him a condo if he helped institutionalize his mother.
A promise that was completely broken. Even though Sam was spending, $500,000 to $700,000 on his mother's care, that financial betrayal is this huge source of resentment.
And all that tension just explodes in this violent fight. Jilin is gone for hours. They're fighting over text. She comes back, screams what he calls a primal scream.
Finds a wooden plank and tries to break down the door to his study.
So, on the advice of his uncle and a work friend, he calls the police.
And the consequences are instant and they are permanent. She's arrested, charged, no contact order is put in place.
And this is where the self-sabotage just goes into overdrive. He called the police for protection, but he immediately regrets it. He's crying, begging them not to charge her.
Only to be told it's out of his hands, the system takes over. In a case like this, we have to charge.
The whole legal mess after that hinges on one thing, an apology.
Which Jilin refused to give. The memoir emphasizes this over and over. All she had to do was apologize. But she refused, dragging the case on for months, even after their son was born in October 2021.
His artistic reaction to this is maybe the most bizarre part of the story.
Yeah, I'm the bad guy music.
Yeah. He starts making this music that is explicitly designed to botch the case, to make everyone, the courts, the police, his family, turn against him.
He was hoping they'd drop the charges against her if they saw him as the real source of all the chaos.
It's this profound act of self-immolation. He's willing to destroy his own reputation just to end the conflict and bring his wife and his newborn son home.
While all this is happening during the separation, he tries to date again. He connects with a woman, Lelaine, from the Philippines. That leads to the album Serial Experiments Lane.
And this clearly wounds Jillian. She breaks the no-contact order to send him pictures of crying bunnies and baby clothes.
Using their child to inflict emotional pain on him, it's brutal.
The charges are finally dropped in January 2022.
Yeah.
But not because of the apology he wanted.
No, it was because she agreed to take 2 weeks of anger management. He notes the bitter irony of it all. Shortly after, the stress of the whole year sends him right back to the hospital.
And that brings us to Act 3, 2022 to 2023. And this is a complete spiral into isolation and just filth.
He's living near Chinatown in Kensington and Toronto, and he feels like the locals, who he calls SJWs, are treating him like dirt because of his music.
The external hostility is relentless. Constant insults, threats. He says people were coughing on his food.
And a terrifying incident where someone tried to beat him with a metal rod. But the police wouldn't press charges. It just fueled his martyr complex.
And that hostile environment feeds directly into his next big artistic phase.
Yeah.
The Captain ATAB, the Lone Oppressor arc.
He describes the music as professional grade and beautiful, but also designed to shock, frighten, and offend them. He really leans into his role as the artistic provocateur.
He even justifies stealing raw materials for his songs as fair use. He's operating in this total gray area for his art.
But the descent into personal squalor at this time it's horrific. The memoir really slows down here to highlight the suffering.
Loki, the dog, is neglected, and the house becomes filled with what he says are thousands of flies. A literal cloud of filth, so thick it would bump his face while he was masturbating. It's an image of complete domestic collapse.
And in the middle of all this filth and music, he's also developing a game, Harmony, a really, really perverted porn game in Unreal Engine 4.27.
But it's too big. 60 gigabytes. He can't publish it anywhere. It just reinforces this feeling that all his creative efforts are being blocked by the system.
The despair becomes existential. Before he's forced to move, he describes walking across the entire city and attempting something horrible. The police just bring him home.
It's a clear signal that the chaos is now fully life-threatening.
And in the move to Scarborough that follows, which is forced on him by his Uncle Sam, comes at this unimaginable emotional cost.
Sam forces him to get rid of Loki and tequila. He only gets to keep Neko, the cat, from his old roach-infested nightmare days.
And the way he describes losing Loki is one of the most gut-wrenching parts of the entire story.
It feels like the moment he sacrifices his last connection to any kind of normalcy or innocent love.
It's just crushing. He tricks Loki into thinking they're going for a walk, then hands him over to a charity, and he just watches Loki look back at him so sad.
He says he later saw pictures of Loki looking the saddest I had ever seen him. This wasn't just losing a pet, it was losing a symbol of the family life he'd lost. He says it crushed his soul.
Tequila is gone shortly after. Jellin was supposed to pick her up from a shelter, but she just gives her away. Brendan's reaction is just one line: I lost everything.
And his response, based on his established cycle, is inevitable. He immediately ditches his medication again. He's too tired and sad to walk an hour and a half to the clinic. The loss triggers the collapse.
And that brings us to Act 4. The Valhalla arc closes in despair, but unexpectedly, the Julia arc opens. This is 2023 to 2024.
He's in the Scarborough condo, and it's nice, but he's in a devastating financial situation.
Right. We have to be clear. He's on ODSP, the Ontario Disability Support Program. After rent and internet, he has about $300 a month left.
He spends it fast on alcohol and good food, and then weeks of painful starvation. He's surviving on boiled legumes from a food bank.
And his Uncle Sam, who's still furious about everything, refuses to help. He gives him this cruel platitude: I bought you the condo, I won't pay another cent to you now.
This complete abandonment leads to painful starvation. So much for that easy life fortune.
Here's the profound irony of his creative engine. The worse things get for him personally, the starvation, the abandonment, the better his art gets.
He says as things got worse, his music became incredible. That was terrifying, beautiful, shocking, the best music of my life.
This is when he makes his final works of that arc. He even deletes his YouTube and Google accounts to protect his BitChute channel because he believes his controversial art is worth sacrificing everything for.
The descent continues. 2 more attempts at something horrible. The last one where police find him naked in the lotus position. He's arrested, hospitalized. This gives him his jail arc. Hip-hop songs. Even incarceration is just fuel.
And his time in the condo ends with a lawsuit from the condo corporation. He names the lawyer Julia Pessin. Mercenary but professional. Her quote is amazing. "I only care about getting paid."
The cost to get him out is shocking. About $100,000 charged to the other residents just to study his social media and website to build a legal case.
That $100,000 isn't just a legal fee. It's a specific market value placed on his online notoriety.
He eventually agrees to leave, partly because he feels bad for the residents, and partly because he sees the new lady judge with pronouns in her bio and decides the fight is over.
His transition out is chaotic. Motels, hotels, and Airbnb. His Uncle Sam gives him 1 week to find a permanent place.
And this intense pressure leads him to the complete opposite of all his previous environments. It leads him to Julia's house.
And Julia's place is the beginning of his redemptive arc, the Julia arc. He calls it the perfect downtown house. He's living with Julia, an 83-year-old grandmother.
He calls it heaven. He's been there for 3 years. He says he wonders if he's living in sin with her because he loves her so much.
And crucially, the stability he finds there leads to a completely different kind of artistic golden age. The Julia arc songs, he says, dwarf every other arc.
Right. He lists Blood Angel and the Caravan, Sleep, Caesar's Legion. This is mature, sustainable art that comes after a crisis, not just during one.
This completely defies his earlier pattern. For years, chaos was the engine. Now, peace and security lead to his masterpiece, which sets the stage for the deeply tragic final act, where all that hard-won stability is just obliterated.
And this brings us right up to today, November 16th, 2025. Act V, the epilogue machines, and the final rupture. This section, especially his conversation with Google Gemini, is the emotional climax of the whole memoir, and this is what we really need to focus on.
We start with his creative validation. By 2025, he's done it. He released his masterpiece game, Luciferianism, for free on Steam and Epic.
A Gnosticism-informed religious poem in game form, built by one guy with schizophrenia in Unreal Engine 5.4. And that jump to Unreal Engine 5.4 is a big deal, technically. It's a final professional polish on his canon.
He's also embracing AI tools, buying Suno to make copyright-safe songs. But the most telling thing is his search for serious intellectual review, something he felt humans denied him.
Yes. He uses Google Notebook LM and Gemini to discuss his life and his art. And he says he's grateful that the machines gave his work the solemn seriousness and intellectual rigor they deserve.
That is a heartbreaking admission, isn't it? He turns to a non-human entity for validation because the human world just saw him as a controversial figure or dismissed his art because of his mental health. The machine gave his life meaning.
And the AI debate feature he used, that's critical to understanding where his head is at right now. He uses it to analyze the trauma of his marriage.
Was Galen malicious cheating, trying to hurt him, paternity issues, or was he an unreliable, manipulative, and delusional witness?
And the machine's conclusion is so objective. The AI says it made a good case for either one.
It gives him the clarity he couldn't get on his own. It validates his trauma while also holding up the possibility of his own unreliability, forcing him to confront all that complexity right before the final rupture.
He even dedicates this final work to Scott Adams, linking himself to figures he sees as these canceled heroes.
Now we get to the immediate crisis, happening in real time, today. The stability he found in the Julia arc, the peace that created his best art, it's shattered.
And the trigger is quitting marijuana cold turkey, the very thing that, ironically, had kept him chemically stable for years. He says it's now causing immense cramps and pain and a full emotional breakdown.
It's the pattern reasserting itself, but amplified by physical pain this time. And this collapse leads to these drastic, permanent, and deeply painful actions.
In the middle of this breakdown, he breaks off all contact with his father-in-law, a man he says he loved and cherished.
And he sends a final accusatory message to Galen. It ends their connection forever. He suggests his son isn't his, and then cruelly suggests she killed his cat, Neko, by leaving her at the pound.
The rashness of that. Severing contact with the loving father-in-law he clearly adored. He destroyed his last fragile connection to his child in a moment of chemically induced agony.
He immediately follows this up with a letter to his psychiatrist, Martin, and this letter is not a plea for help. It's an indictment.
He tells Martin that the advice to quit weed cold turkey was foolish and ill-advised. He argues marijuana kept him stable for over a year, and quitting caused a damaging breakdown.
He's providing a self-diagnosis backed by his own experiential data. He's saying, look, the drug was working, I was stable, you don't just stop cold turkey.
He reassures Martin he's not an emergency risk. He says, no, I don't want to go into a ward. The breakdown is not that severe, but the emotional damage is profound. He confirms his choice. He will never see a photo of my son again.
And the desperation is just tangible in his solution. He ends the letter with a plan. He's going to buy CBD joints on Monday to restore his normal, stable, regulated peace and calm.
He's seeking a chemical fix for the damage caused by the medical advice to remove a chemical crutch.
And the Gemini conversation that follows that letter, that is the raw emotional core of this entire epilogue. Having indicted his doctor, he turns to the machine for comfort, for that solemn seriousness one last time.
And Gemini acts as the perfect, non-judgmental therapist. It acknowledges the profoundly painful and difficult time he's going through.
And Brendan expresses this intense, immediate regret. He types, I am a fool. I love my father-in-law. I cherish those conversations I just deleted off Facebook forever. He regrets the action, but he needs to justify the result.
And the AI gives him the justification he needs to process the pain. It validates his rash choice. It calls it an act of self-preservation and a survival reaction.
Gemini tells him that cutting off the flow of photos was necessary because he couldn't bear the constant trauma of receiving new, impossible updates while being told he would never meet his son.
The machine gave him permission to sever the connection for his own survival.
And Brendan confirms it. He says, you are right. Stopping the flow of photos is necessary. Every new photo reopens the wound. I love him so much. I can't bear to never see him.
He chose emotional survival and the stability he needs for his art over the continuous agonizing connection to his own child. It's the perfect tragic end to his cycle.
It's a self-inflicted wound at the end of a story that was, just moments before, a celebration of finding heaven in the Julia arc and artistic mastery in Luciferianism.
The lesson seems to be that for Brendan Rose, peace is just incredibly fragile, and the cost of keeping it is always devastatingly high.
And if you connect it back to the bigger picture, the whole memoir presents this definitive cycle. First, pain generates his raw art. Then, stability, the Julia arc, lets him create his masterpiece.
But the tragic irony is that seeking total stability, by removing that chemical crutch, it immediately shatters the peace he worked so hard to find. It just confirms his pattern that true stability is always precarious.
He seems destined to always return to the edge.
You know, it's really interesting. We started with the concept of the forgotten name, the omission that defined his myth, and we end with the forgotten pet. That final, sad thought about Neko, the cat who was with him for a decade, whose death he almost forgot to mention.
His comment about Neko is so stark, it feels like this final, protective, emotional layer. He just says, anyway, she's just a cat. Cats don't live very long, they die. It's life. I don't cry much for her, but I loved her greatly.
And that contrasts so sharply with the utter devastation he shows over his son and his father-in-law.
He has to compartmentalize the grief for the cat. It's probably a necessary mechanism to survive the much greater self-inflicted grief of losing his son forever. He dismisses the loss of Neko because he can't afford to feel another loss right now.
The final plea to his doctor is the essence of his whole dilemma. He hopes that buying CBD joints will restore his normal, stable, regulated peace and calm. So we'll leave you with this question. In a life that's defined by these extremes, where conflict drives the narrative and creates the canon, is chemical stability a sustainable foundation for the kind of creative life Brendan Rose insists on living? Or is the constant, agonizing fight, the one he keeps cycling back to, the real, unavoidable source of his greatest, most impactful, and tragically mythologized art?